guys, and welcome back. Today I'm working on my first completed tarot card for my tarot card deck, and that is Justice. I feel so much better now that I've finished the first card. I talked a bit about how I was feeling so anxious to start because I was feeling a lot of perfectionism for this whole giant project, because this first piece really sets a lot of things in motion and things into a more concrete realm for all of the other cards. So I wanted everything to be perfect before I started, and I just feel much better now that it's done. It's not perfect, which is fine because it's never going to be perfect, but it's done, and I'm really happy with it, and I'm really excited to continue working on the other one that I have started and to continue working on the other ones that are still in the ether in my brain. So this is going to be just kind of a chatty hangout video while I talk about the things that I've learned about oil painting and oil painting in general, and about starting a giant project like oil painting a whole tarot deck. But I really want to get a lot of practice at oil painting, and that's one of the big reasons why I chose to do this deck in oils. I've completely fallen in love with it. I love the process. I love the final result. I love everything about oil painting. I find it just an absolute joy to work with. And over the past couple of years since I started getting into it, I haven't put nearly as much time into it as I would like. It was really spotty at first. I would do maybe a couple pieces within a year. So this is part of it. If I set aside a project that is specifically to be painted in oils, then it will force me to use them, and it'll force me to learn how to handle them better and handle them quicker and more efficiently and all of the good stuff that comes with that. So I'm very excited to look forward to my future of, I think I have 76 and a half pieces left to paint. So that's a lot of real estate as far as learning how to oil paint. So I'm hoping I'll be a lot more comfortable with it by the time I'm done with this. Some of the things that I have struggled with in the past and I wanted to learn how to handle better was learning how to have the correct mixture of medium to oil paint. The medium, when you add it, it helps the oil paint have a really beautiful flow to it so that it spreads really nicely and you're able to get soft blends and coverage. And ultimately, when I do my line art, I need it to have a really perfect mixture of that medium that I'm using and the paint. And I've struggled with that in the past. There have been a lot of times where I'll mix up what I'm about to paint with and I use too much oil and it ends up beating up on the surface. And I'm slowly getting better at understanding these ratios as I'm mixing them and figuring out what the viscosity of it should be depending on what paints I'm using. It's all just a lot of trial and error and experience, and the more I do it, the better I'll be at actually mixing those together. And I do feel like working on this piece was a specific step in the right direction of understanding it better, of getting those mixtures right on the first try better, rather than needing to then mix more paint in and then I have a huge pile of paint that I do not need. But yeah, that has been my goal for a while now, is understanding the mediums that I'm using better. And the print of the piece that I'm working on today, Justice, she is going to be the exclusive print for Patreon for February. So if you'd like to get a print of her, make sure to sign up for the print tier. That's what it's called, the print tier, over on Patreon by February 28th. There's a link down in the description that'll take you over there if you want to check that out. But I absolutely love how she turned out. I loved painting this piece and I love how she looks. And one little trick that I learned, I have these little Ziploc bags, like really tiny, like inch by inch sized, from years ago when I used to sell individual pinback buttons. That's like a blast from the past, but I have a ton of those left over, and I've been scraping up the paint and putting those little piles of paint in these bags that I can then save and use on future layers for the painting, and that has helped so much. I'm not really great at getting the right quantity of paint mixed before I paint. So I usually end up with a lot more than I need mixed on my palette. I'd rather err on the side of too much paint than not enough, and then having it be an inaccurate mixture when I mix up more to cover it. So I tend to have more paint mixed, and I hate throwing away paint. It's really frustrating to watch those supplies that I love dearly just get tossed into the garbage, or the equivalent thereof. But anyways, using the bags helped so much. I was able to save them and have that exact mixture for when I had that base layer dry and I could add more paint. I loved that. It made the process a lot less tedious, where I didn't have to remix the exact same paint when I needed the exact same paint again. And I came to a bit of a realization working on this piece, and that's that moving forward with this project, I want to really focus more on making pieces that I just am so excited about painting. I want to put in details that I can't wait to paint because it's just so enjoyable and intriguing and challenging in a good way. I know that I have a habit of overthinking pieces, and I often think that a piece should be a certain way, even though it doesn't need to be that way, and it's actually something that I'm not excited about painting, or it's portraying something in a way that's making it more challenging, but not challenging in a way that makes me feel excited about working on it. I don't know if that makes sense. There's certain challenges that just make me just so passionate about working on the piece and figuring it out and learning how to do it better. And then there's some that it just feels like it's a challenge just for the sake of it being more difficult. And I don't want to get stuck in a place where I feel like I have to artificially put in those things. And I do want to just look for more details that I'll enjoy painting. Like in this piece, eventually I paint a little pattern on part of her cape. It's not even on most of the cape, it's just this little part of the collar. And I loved painting it. I loved the effect. It added a little bit more personality to the character and a little bit more story, and it was just this little tiny detail, but I loved painting it. I would love to find more places that I can put that kind of detail in. I think that I overlook a lot of places that I could spend more time making it feel more alive, more interesting, and more interesting to paint. So yes, I would love to make sure that every piece that I'm working on has at least one little detail like that I think will just bring some more life into the piece that I want to paint, that I'm excited about how it transforms the piece. I just want to be more conscious about that. I want to think about it more as I'm sketching it out and as I'm painting it. Oh, and I did make a change with these over all of my other oil paintings, and I'm so happy with the results. So I used to use a clear ground, or a clear primer, a clear gesso, there we go. And I would like to do the transfer and then a more tweaked sketch with the transfer right onto the raw wood, and then I would use this primer on top of it so I could see through it, I could see the color of the wood behind it, and that would allow me that base layer to start painting on it. But over time, I was more and more frustrated with how gritty and textured that primer is, and for whatever reason, the clear gesso is actually, from what I've read, it's more textured than the average gesso. And when I went to take pictures of it to turn it into prints or to digitize it for any reason, those little bumps really were emphasized by the way that the light was hitting it. So it looked great in person, but in the photographs, it looks like there's just all of these little artifacts. There's little white spots and dark spots, and it just looked so textured, and it was really frustrating, and I didn't like that. So for this tarot project, I decided that I was going to try an oil primer, and specifically I'm using the Gamblin Oil Ground. It takes a little bit more dry time, or a lot more dry time. It takes, I think it was like 5 days to a week. So you have to apply that and then let it sit and then use your panel. But I am so much happier with this. I'm in love with the surface of using this. I found that it was so much butterier to paint on. That first layer was a bit more slick in a way. The paint felt more slick, and in some ways it felt like the paint, like the transparency of the paint was more emphasized. I could see streaks in that first layer a little bit more, which wasn't really a problem. It was the base layer, so I was just establishing the lights and the darks and the basic color, but I was going to reapply paint over most of it. So that really wasn't an issue at all, but it did allow the texture of the painting to be a lot more enjoyable. I didn't feel like I was painting on sandpaper, which I hated that feeling. I did not like that. I didn't really like painting on the panels until after I got at least that first layer down. And then as I built more paint on top of it, it felt more like an enjoyable surface to paint on when I was using the clear gesso. But with the oil ground, it was enjoyable from the very beginning. I loved it a lot. I applied it as just white, but you can actually add, don't follow this without looking it up, but I'm pretty sure it's just oil paint. You can add any oil paint and you can tint it. So if you want to start off with a color that's closer to what the final palette is going to be, then you don't have to paint on stark white. The only downside, and this actually turned out to not really be a downside at all, is that I had to do the transfer on top of the oil ground, but it didn't smear into the paint like I thought it would. I was a little worried that it would just dingy it up, but it didn't. It basically stayed where it was. I was careful to avoid the lines anyways, but it did kind of just stay. It didn't really smudge around. I'm just so much happier. I will give a little warning though, if you're going to use this, please make sure you do it in a ventilated area. It was really fumey, and I am trying to be much safer with the ways that I'm using my oil paints. So after I did the first panel, I realized it was just way too fumey to be doing in my studio. That was a huge mistake, so I had to move to my garage, and I did it down there where I could have my garage door open. But yeah, that that was a lesson learned. It was really nauseous. But anyways, that is an improvement, a great improvement on the process of oil painting for me personally. I do know that a lot of people love the clear gesso, so this very well may not be advice that follows over, that works for you, that you enjoy. It's all about finding the tools and the mediums and the paints that you love personally, that works for the way that you want to paint. And this is the solution for a problem that I've had, so I'm really excited about that. And that's it for today. This piece, Justice, is the print for February for Patreon. It is exclusive for this month, so if you'd like a print of her, make sure to sign up for Patreon by February 28th. And that is the print tier. That is what it's called. So there's that link down in the description that'll take you over there. And again, she's available at my shop if you'd like to own the original painting. And of course, as always, I want to give a huge thank you to all of my patrons over on Patreon. You guys are the ones who help me to be able to make these paintings and to make these videos. So thank you so much for that. And I will see you guys next time.